Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, urban planners, city experts, NGO representatives, city representatives, stakeholders, and other people who have joined this event, Baltic Urban Lab. My name is Peter Bajars. I'm the lead architect and the founder of Out-of-Box Architecture. Since more and more cities change in their policies the name architecture to place making and environment design, so I'm the one who's representing the past, and I hopefully think that the audience is representing the future. The conference will present the results of this research about how the cities around the Baltic Sea deal with the brownfields, because the problems actually are the same in all cities. Different stakeholders, unclear visions, lack of financial support. So the topic, dealing with the past and planning for the future, and our agenda actually will be divided in two parts. The first one will deal with the past, more about this, how to deal with the existing geological, physical conditions of the brownfield sites. And the second one, we will talk about the future, how to create vision which is supported by everyone, by the stakeholders, city, private people, and so. For the opening of the conference, I would like to invite Oksana Dumpe, Riga City Council, City Development Department, Head of Board of Project Management, Deputy Director of Project Management Issues, representing City of Riga, the host of this event.
So good morning and welcome all the project partners, all our fellow representatives of our fellow municipalities, stakeholders, experts, and all participants of our final conference. It's a true pleasure for our City Development Department to host this event here in Riga, especially because this event deals with one of the key challenges in the sustainable development of our cities, turning urban brownfields into possibilities of development and livable urban environment. I would also like to point out that the venue that is gathering us here today is located in Spīķerik Quarter, in the quarter that in 2014 experienced major revitalization through one of projects that was carried out by our department. So we are also very grateful to the Central Baltic program for such opportunity to work together with Union of Baltic Cities, to work together with our fellow municipalities, and to get these new knowledges. And also we would like to say our gratitude to our leading partner, to Union of Baltic Cities, to bring together, for willingness to bring together all us in the search of the best practices in the brownfield revitalization. And for us, this project has given a vital experience of managing competition process between the bright minds of our three leading universities, of Riga Technical University, University of Latvia, and Riseba, in the development proposals for our pilot territory for Mūkusala area revitalization. And I want also to say that a lot of these good ideas will be taken into account when our department will develop new programming documents for the new programming period. And it's a pleasure, of course, to see so many enthusiastic people here today, so I hope that this will be a valuable experience for all of us. But please do remember that this event here today is also a celebration of a successful implementation of our project. So please feel this festive atmosphere here today, enjoy yourself, and of course, enjoy Riga. Thank you.
Thank you, Oksana. And now I would like to invite Björn Gornholm, Head of Secretariat of the Union of the Baltic Cities Sustainable Cities Commission.
Well, thank you, dear ladies and gentlemen, experts and forerunners. I'm also really happy to be here, and as our moderator said that, well, sometimes feel to be in the past, and I was very much in the past some years ago and feel that still sometimes still living in the past. But the Baltic Urban Lab had the first planning meeting in May 2014. And the discussion speeded up among our cities in the central Baltic region area very fast during the autumn, and if you remember, we had the first concept note submitted in February 2015, 6th of February. Still, we were talking about really what we would do, and sometimes we were a little bit scared about, do we dare to go into stakeholder involvement? Can we really involve the companies and people and so on? But anyway, we went on, and the preparations continue successfully, and we submitted the last and final application 6th of June. We received a positive response from the monitoring authority of the Central Baltic Program 26th of August 2015. And now we are here. And I think that Tina, you were already, well, going through our applications. So really happy to have you here. And the kickoff was then organized in Turku, 19th of January, and I was just in the neighboring building in the hospital being sick there, so I'm really happy to have the opportunity to be here in the final conference. Since then, a lot has happened in our cities and within the project in the field of urban regeneration and urban development. Active cooperation between the pilot cities, the pilot districts, and the supporting organization has taken place. And we have developed the definition of brownfield areas in the Baltic Sea region. We have been testing and analyzing stakeholder methods, looking into private-public people partnerships, building guidelines and recommendations, and guidelines for integrated partnership-based planning. And in addition, several policy and practice recommendations has taken place, and so on and so on. On the same time, we know that many development steps have taken place in our cities and our pilot areas. We have many other projects going on the same time. In Tallinn, we have structural plans as results of the project, development plans in Riga, second stage plans in Norrköping, and master plans in Turku. All these influenced and with support of project partners and our cities involved. 4 years is a really short time when it comes to regeneration of cities, or city districts and city structures. And it is extremely short when it comes to changing attitudes and way of thinking. But together, working together, cooperating is anyway perhaps the smartest and most efficient way to increase the speed of change and management. We need to change, look into change management to improve our resilience, to make possible to adapt to large and sudden scale challenges and problems. For example, effects of climate change is facing us in many ways, and more severe challenges in the city planning concerning safety, security, and being attractive in the future. The effects of climate change are confronting all of us on the same time as we try to be smart, efficient, attractive as cities for students and businesses and companies. As mentioned before, the project has resulted in concrete outcomes as well as tools and recommendations. And I sincerely hope that you will use and utilize these tools and methods that you have been developing. You need to capitalize the time and efforts you have been doing. And I will, from our side, promise that your efforts in the projects will be disseminated via our UBC challenges and in events as much as possible. And we are starting next week with a commission meeting in Lithuania and Klaipėda, where we'll look into city planning and mobility, multimodality solutions. In addition, I urge you all to look into next steps of development and cooperation. UBC and our commission is involved in a macro region, a Baltic Sea region, project concerning state level and local level resilience and adaptation to climate change and civil protection. and the tools that you have been developing here in this project will be utilized in this project. So here we are talking with the ministries and the cities in the whole Baltic Sea region, from Norway to Russia. And finally, I would like to thank you on behalf of Union of Baltic Cities and all our project partners, the city of Riga, for hosting a really nice, well and warm welcome here to Riga. Thank you.
Thank you, Björn. It was a story about the timeline and the biggest challenges, but now I would like to invite Maija and Sandra to talk about the lessons, what we learned from a Baltic Urban Lab. And so the speakers will speak about towards integrated and partnership-based planning of the brownfields. So please, Maija and Sandra, stage is yours.
So good morning, everybody, and welcome also from my side. My name is Maija Rusanen, and I have had privilege to work with this project since the very first ideas, like what we should do together, and until the end of the project. So it has been really, I'm very happy to present our results today. I guess we can all agree that there is really a high demand to develop brownfield areas so that European cities can grow in more sustainable way. A lot of cities are already doing that and transforming old industrial and other use areas into new district for housing and doing businesses. And this, what you can see there, is a numerical goal related to brownfield development. No net land take by 2050. But when we talk about brownfield development, I think we should talk more about how that can support environmentally and socially sustainable development in cities. And how can we ensure like good services in the areas we are building and good transport connections. So I think that key issue is really discuss how these brownfields can be turned into good living environment for people. In mobility planning, there has been launched this slogan, planning for people, but I think that should be really like used in all kind of planning tasks. And brownfield development is very complex process. Like our conference title says, it requires dealing with the past and dealing with the contamination of the sites, and also preserving sometimes industrial and cultural history related to the places. But at the same time, we need to plan already for the future and think about how the area should look like in 20 years and how we could modernize it so it would better fit the current urban development. Based on the experiences, our project, like it was mentioned, cities share really similar challenges when it comes to brownfield development. The land ownership is very fragmented often, and there is usually a large amount of stakeholders' involvement who have interest to develop the site. But there is usually also, or many times, lack of common vision between these different parties, how the site should be developed. Of course, there's also the technical, geological, legal, and financial challenges when it comes to remediation of the contaminated land. To tackle these challenges, we claim that close cooperation and partnerships between different actors from the really beginning of the redevelopment process is a really key solution. Due to the complex nature of brownfields, there are usually quite high potential risks, environmental and financial risks related to development. So therefore, it's really important that there is commitment and common understanding between all involved parties. And the process should actually start with an open dialogue with the involved parties, citizens, NGOs, developers, landowners, companies locating in the site may be moving there in future, and of course the city, who has a very high role to drive this sustainable urban development, so that the participation of different stakeholders could be ensured and create common ground for the cooperation created. But often cities lack skills and methods and knowledge how to coordinate these kind of large development processes, which are based on broad partnerships between different actors. And we in the project, we have focused especially on the cooperation in the beginning of the planning process, which is sometimes a bit abstract state of planning, when the visions and the strategic goals are set, and of course also when the trust is created. And we think that it's important to cooperate on different levels, on local levels, to really find this together, these visions, like how our city should be developed, but also on national level to find common approaches and have clear rules and responsibilities of each parties. And of course also on cross-border level. That is what we have been doing. We have been, during the project, we have tried to develop together common solutions for brownfield development, and also exchange good practices and learned from each other. So I think that's also a really important level of cooperation. And now we get to present our project in a nutshell. So our project has been a 3-year cooperation project. Björn already mentioned all those important dates for us, and it's funded by the Central Baltic Program. And we have had UPC Sustainable Cities Commission has had the privilege to coordinate the project. And the key aim has been to develop and test integrated planning and partnership models for the development of brownfield sites and promote more open and inclusive urban planning in our region. And our project cities, Norrköping, Tallinn, Turku and Riga, and have implemented city pilots on 4 selected brownfield sites in their cities. And the key aim in those pilots has been to find, together with different actors, common visions how these sites could be better used, how these could be further developed. And now I will give floor to Sandra.
Yes, thank you, Maja. My name is Sandra Oliveira Costa, and I'm working at Nordregio, who's also a partner in the project. And one of our tasks has been to follow the cities in their work with the stakeholder engagement, and both looking at the around 25 activities that they have been doing in total, and we have been looking on those both each of them separately, but also trying to, now in the later stage of the project, to zoom out and see how these participation methods have functioned and in which part of the planning processes they are affecting the pilot site and the planning and so on. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the conclusions and the reflections that we have made, and you can read more about those in this report that is you can find it by the entrance. It was finished for 1 or 2 weeks ago. So cities have been working both with new methods, trying out new things in this planning process, but also, of course, with traditional methods, and we haven't had the opportunity to analyze everything they have been doing, but some of the things. So, for example, we see that there are 5 set of methods that have been repeated, not in all cities, but are common among some of the cities. And we see the close collaboration with students. This has turned out to be a very creative resource in the work, giving inspiration to the planners and to the master plans and visions. And what I'm presenting now is both reflections from Nordregio's side, but also learnings that the cities themselves have communicated to us. And then we also see that it's important to respect the work that students does, since their situation is of course different than the professional planners. We also see that close collaboration with key stakeholders is something that gains a big space in these among the stakeholder engagement activities. And key stakeholders such as landowners or property owners, to have a close collaboration with them can be very resource intensive, but it also means that they are part of the project and take responsibility from early on. And there have been many new digital tools for participation tried out during this project, and these are shown to have great potential outreach when it comes to both communicating the project, but also to gain ideas and comments on the planning that is going on. And here we see that the user friendliness of these tools is very, very important for them to be successful. And one thing is also that what is the difference between when you gain input from someone you can't talk to? How do you understand this information? And that this is something that is continuously need to work on. Another thing that we see is that some of the cities have been working with public activity in the urban areas, activating these pilot sites. And this is a way to bring attention to the sites. And sometimes it has shown that it give gains for the relationship between cities and NGOs, even though the activities may encounter problems on the way, but they create a debate on what can actually happen in these sites. And we also see that the cultural heritage, of course, can mean that there are some specific limitations to what you can do. And social media has also been used by the partner cities, and also this shows to have a great potential outreach, and it works as a great way to communicate the project. I'm not going to tell you much details about what the cities have been doing, because they are going to present themselves. And all these things you can also read more about in the report. But we also formulated it like this, that some of the parts that in the planning process that stakeholders are invited to participate in has to do with information and idea gathering about the early stages in the planning of these pilot sites, and also more close collaboration in formulating the visions and the master plans, and sometimes being engaged in solving very specific problems. And also, as I said before, to actually be acting in space. And we see that there are some, since all these are brownfield areas, they have some specific characteristics, and some of these also show in the activities that stakeholders have been engaging with, the cities have been engaging with other stakeholders and with citizens. And the issue of fragmented land ownership and many developers is reflected in these close collaboration forums with key stakeholders. The contaminated land is, for example, noted in one of the digital tools that we will hear more about later, which is the picture below here, which is a tool to communicate the contamination issue. And also the issue of inaccessible land has been handled with some temporary solutions in making temporary bike and pedestrian path to actually be able to easier access these areas while they are developing. So there are the people, like citizens and NGOs and companies and so on, are invited both to formulate or contribute to the vision or the plan for the brownfield site, to make the space accessible while it's being planned, and also in some cases to actually be part of formulating the specific tools that will be used later on for participation in the urban planning process. And we have been looking on how it includes the private sector, the public sector, and the people, or the citizens. Yeah, and I think this is just a summary of what I already said. So let's move on. Well, there is of course many gains in close collaboration, as we have understood, and it's going to be interesting in the future also to see how does this approach actually affect the physical space, and that is yet to see. But the cities have all formulated development strategies and plans for each of the areas. That is one of the main outputs from this project. And these are strategies and visions for how the site should be developed in the future. And they are done in cooperation with many, many different stakeholders. And these have a little bit, not all of them are of course unique for the specific site. Some of them are more about the physical change, and some of them are more about the organization and how to continue to work with the next step.
So as mentioned already many times today, this brownfield development requires dealing with the past and dealing with the contamination and planning for future. And that requires really good coordination of all these parallel activities and tasks. And that also requires quite a lot of different expertise in the process. Like, it's not only enough to have expertise in urban planning, but there should be expertise in project management, stakeholder involvement, communication, environment, and so on. So to sum up the lessons learned from our project and the results from these city pilots, we have developed this guideline to support other urban planners and experts to coordinate brownfield development projects in a more structured way. So I'm very happy to launch our guide today. It's available in our website in English, Finnish, Estonian, and Swedish at the moment, and will be very soon also in Latvian, so you can download it there. But this guide gives the tips how to organize these stakeholder participation processes and how to really cooperate within the brownfield planning with different parties. And it focuses especially on the early stages of the planning process. Like I mentioned, when the trust is created and when really the base for the cooperation is set. And yeah, there are these leaflets there in the registration table, so please take your copy. These are available in all our project languages as well, and explain a bit what the guide is about. But we believe that there are several stages in both the soil remediation process and also the visioning and land use planning process when stakeholders could and should participate, and when there should be really dialogue and cooperation between different parties. And we have noticed in the project that it's very important to try to visualize these planning processes and the different steps that are involved. This is especially important for those who are not familiar with the planning processes, like citizens. But actually, we have noticed that it's also important to those who are the planners to really have a better overview of the process and the different steps. So it helps to really plan, to visualize. So we have created these two diagrams, one on the soil remediation and regeneration process, and then other on visioning and land use planning process, which try to simplify the different steps in the process and focuses really on the possibilities when cooperation could take place. And the motivations and reasons to cooperate, and also what is expected from the cooperation and how different participants can contribute, may change from like step to step. But it's really important to recognize always, like, what's the purpose? Why somebody should participate, and what do we want from that? And planning systems and procedures, as well as organizational setup, varies from country to country, but it also varies from city to city. And of course, always when you talk about development projects, the context is different, the stakeholders are different, and the challenges are different as well. But however, we believe that in all development processes, there are like certain issues that you really need to think about before you start the process and really take into account. So therefore, we didn't want to create this kind of step-by-step guide to tell that, okay, you need to do exactly like that. But we wanted to highlight these certain important themes that should be considered, and these are based on the experiences in our project. So the first section of the guideline focuses on internal organization and preparation and cooperation within the local administration, who are often coordinating the processes. And we believe that this internal cooperation should be good in order that you can then involve different kind of stakeholders and encourage the participation as well. And then the second section focuses on how to really cooperate with stakeholders, like how to perform stakeholder analysis, how to select the right methods, what to take into account in the communication, and how to prepare stakeholder involvement plan. And we wanted to do the guidelines as easy as possible to read, so each topic has like 1 page. And we have also like nice case examples from our cities and also other cities on implementing public-private people partnerships and how they have like collaborated with different stakeholders. The guideline also includes like tips for further reading and some useful tool. And it's based on the experiences during the project, but also a dialogue between different experts and planners that has taken place during our project in this region. And if you would like to learn more about the guidelines, I would like to welcome you to join our webinar where we present different tools for urban planning, and that will be organized in cooperation with other Central Baltic funded project which has already ended, iWater, and will be organized by UBC Sustainable Cities Commission. So if you would like to learn more, then please join our webinar and follow our website to get more information. And you can also check our website, you can get the guideline there, and also all the other inputs what we have presented. But we wish you a fruitful conference, and we are really looking forward to discuss these topics with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya and Sandra. Since we still have a few minutes left, I would like to ask a question. You presented this urban planning pyramid there, the planning, understanding, visioning, and a dialogue. Do you have some answer or lesson learned what to do if we're dealing with a brownfield, which usually is a no place and people are not connected to the place, and stakeholders are happy with their terra incognita status? How to start the process?
Do you want to take this?
I think there are different ways to do it, that people doesn't necessarily have to live within those areas, but developing a huge area which will be part of the future city, of course, concerns more than only those that are working with the development of the site. So I think there are always ways to find activities, either maybe by inviting people to actually come to these spaces and kind of discover them for themselves, and also find ways to invite citizens into to be aware of that this development is taking place and that it is something that will maybe affect their future lives as well.
And I think that different kind of tools can be used for that. We will actually later hear from the experiences from the city of Norrköping, like how they have like dealt with the situation in their brownfield development, and they will also present later their visualization tool. So that I think those also help. So we really need to look for like different ways to involve also those people, or like when we have a place which maybe doesn't have such a clear identity as a living place.
Okay, thank you. I'm really looking forward to the presentation of Norrköping. So, thank you, Maya and Sandra, once again. And we are ready to move forward to our first keynote speaker. I would like to invite from the city of Rotterdam, Kees de Wette, and he will speak about balancing 4 Ps in Rotterdam subsurface. Kees is working in Rotterdam on remediation programs, including innovations towards a more holistic approach. So, Kees, floor is yours. And
thank you. And thank you also the organization. I feel very welcome and I'm very happy to be on this congress. And I would like to tell something about my experiences in Rotterdam. Also dealing with 4 Ps, people, planet, prosperity and process. And we try to, I'm a civil engineer, and we try from another perspective, we try to help urban planners, urban designers, how they can improve the process. And I will tell you in this presentation more about it. And I made that's really good. The structure of my presentation is about a little bit about MH4 transition in the harbor area, a little bit about brownfield remediation, how it developed into more combination remediation urban development, a more holistic approach, and then I will tell something about balancing the 4 Ps, including the subsurface, and at the end I will tell something about the results. Where are we now with implementing the subsurface in the planning process? As you all know that the Netherlands is for a part below sea level. The blue area, that's the western part of the Netherlands, is below sea level. Close to Rotterdam, even 6 meters below sea level, and it's because of the soft soil, the peat and the clay. And the water boards are already working on that for 7 centuries. So we are already working with the subsurface for a long time. But not everybody is aware of that. If you look to Rotterdam, about 200 years ago, it was really a small town. It's on the right, the circle, that's the city of Rotterdam. It's only a small triangle. And on the left side, that's MH4, that's a harbor area that would be there 100 years later. Here you can see Rotterdam, how it's been growing in the last 170 years. It's becoming a really big urban area with the harbors going out inside the North Sea. And you can see that also MH4 is now in between 2 cities. On the right side it's Rotterdam, on the left side it's Schiedam. That's my birthplace, by the way, and that's where they make the really good Geneva. MH4 transition. Here is a view of the harbor area. As you can see above, you can see the big harbors. It's about an area of about 400 hectares. Most of it is water, and about 160 hectares is land. And in the middle you can see the big towers, and that was our former area where we were located, where we were working. MH4 is part of the city harbor area that is going to be developed, and it's about 1,600 hectares that are going to be developed. On the left side, on the lower picture, you see MH4. On the right side, you see RDM, which is a former submarine wharf. And as you also can see that it's a really, still it's really a industrial area, and there's quite some companies still working there. In the development, we just focusing on the companies who are still working there, new companies, creative industry, etc. And the living aspects, houses, etc. will be in a later stadium from 2025. We also have to make better connection with the cities, Schiedam and Rotterdam, because it's now a sort of a no-go area. It's a bit out of the city. And of course, livability should be better, and it should be climate-proof and resilient. And this is how it should look like within 20, 25 years. And hopefully we will get there, but there's a long way to go, because there are also some other areas in Rotterdam where they want to build houses and where they want to develop. So it's going to be a challenge to get this high on the agenda in the municipality. And as you can see here with the blue arrows, it's a lot about making connection with the city. So that's important. It's an old harbor. It's about 100 years old. Well, you all know what you can find there. Brownfields, monuments, and especially no connection with the natural riverbank. And it's also really paved, as you can see on the next few slides. Here you can see old and new storage buildings. On the left side, the new ones. On the right side, it's a storage building from almost 100 years old. From the beginning, they're just close together. Actually, that's also a monument. And this also shows a bit about the brownfields that's not used, or sometimes they're used for truck sellers. This is in the middle is this electricity plant. So this was a coal electricity plant used until a few years ago. So it's not in use anymore. So now it gives a big plot to be developed, and it's close to the remediation site. This is a bit of a picture of the transition we're in. The gas holder on the left top side is in use now for dance events and music concerts, etc. The picture below, the Keilerwerf, that's two guys who are starting in a big building with startups, so they can start their creative startup, building tiny houses, for instance, or making energy out of plants. You name it, and it's there. And on the right side below, it's Joep van Lieshout, who's an artist, and he is making buildings, statues, etc. And he's thinking about starting an art hub in the area. And also, we have urban farming, which is really nice as a temporary use. Actually, it's also had the connection with my history, because I did an agricultural study, and I really like a little bit of farming in the city, so people know where their food comes from. Here you can see the remediation site. It's in the middle of MH4, which is in Dutch Merwevierhaus, but that's a bit too long, so MH4, that's the name they gave it. As you can see, it's a really stony area, and it's only in the top you can see some green areas, but mainly it's really covered. It's a 15 hectare plot with the former gas works was there, and they made gas out of coal. It was there from 100 years ago, so we can have a party, but it's not anymore there. It was closed in the 50s, in the late 50s, because then we found the gas in the northern part of the Netherlands. So it's it's one of the gas works in Rotterdam. We had more than 10 gas work locations in Rotterdam, and we had a program on that gas work, so a national program, and we get founded by the national government with 90 million euro, which is quite a lot of money, and we have to remediate all these gas work locations, and the biggest is the Keilerhaven gas work location on the left side I showed you before, and estimately it's about 50 million euro to cost it will take to remediate, because of the really hard circumstances. And this is one of the products you can find as a pollution. It's a tar. We found it in one of the gas work locations, and you will find it also in Keilerhaven. This is a slide with you can see the pollution in the plot, so it's quite polluted. In the beginning we were thinking, okay, it's a big pollution, so we start at 1 and we go on 2, 3, 4 and so on. And we will end up in 2025, because then there would be a World Expo. That was how we were thinking a few years ago, but then the World Expo wasn't going to Rotterdam, but somewhere else. So then the political need to make speed was not there anymore. So then we had to think about another way to do the remediation. So we just started with one part, this 1 hectare. So we were already making this happening, so that we could show that we are busy. And you can see there was a lot of junk. That's the way how they left the plots out in those days. You know, when they demolished the building, they just leave it there. And there was a really thick foundation, about 1/2 meter, with a lot of wooden poles. They also left it there. So there was quite some work to do. And then, well, we were thinking we have to do it in another way. We need a holistic approach. We need to think about the natural system and the human system. Also, to help the urban development, we have to explain how the natural and the human system works, the subsurface system. And as you can see here on the left side, we have the urban development layers with the people, metabolism, and so on, up until the subsurface, from the quick changes until the slow changes. As you can imagine, everything you do in the subsurface is there for many, many years. Think about the sewers, think about tunnels, etc. So if you work in the subsurface, you have to be really aware of the time schedule. So if you look at the natural system, you have to understand how the natural system works. While we are living in a delta in Rotterdam, you know how a delta works, how the groundwater flows, etc., etc. So that's why we were choosing for this type of approach. And we already were busy from 2007 with a team of people working on this awareness of about the subsurface, and try to get the subsurface in a way of information so other people could use it. But it's a slow road to get there. So it takes time, and well, we have time. So we're still working on it. And to explain the subsurface, the complexity of the subsurface, we try to make it easier and make it into 4 layers. And it's based on geology, usage, and legislation. And as you can see the different layers, the shallow layer, construction layer, drinking water layer, and the deep layer. And I can explain in the next pages. The shallow layer is important for cables and pipes. It's important for the roots of the trees, and it's also important for the groundwater. And in Rotterdam, when the groundwater is not properly handled, then the wooden poles can get rot, and then you have pile rots, and then even buildings can fall down. So that even happens in Rotterdam. The second one is the construction layer, which is mainly used for founding the buildings, and it's on the sand layer, because on top there's the soft layers I explained before. And the layer below is the drinking water layer. Actually, in Rotterdam, it's not about drinking water, but more about cooling water and storage, more and more storage for hot and cold water for the buildings. So making the city a bit more sustainable. And then the last layer is the deep layer for oil and gas, which is hardly used anymore in the Rotterdam area, but it's more and more used for geothermal energy. And that's quite something that you can see here in the exploring permits. It's a booming business. So there are still a few greenhouses that already work with the geothermal energy, but more and more, even Rotterdam starts to think about using geothermal energy. So if I combine all these things, there's a lot of potential for use, the subsurface, but it's complex because of safety, health, even politics, and its potential is not unlimited. And politics, we have a project, a metro project, and it goes from the city to the coast, a very important project, but it has a lot of delays and a lot of extra cost because they didn't do a really good research of the subsurface. So now the project can be started up after a year later. So even now it still happens once in a while, so we still have some work to do. And the potential of the subsurface is not unlimited for the warm and cold storage, for instance. And you need technical expertise, and you need technical expertise people who can explain it. You have to work on it if you want to avoid delays and make full use of the opportunities. And by that you need a holistic view on the subsurface. And you have to bring in the subsurface as early as possible in the process. So even in the visions. And actually in Rotterdam it's now included in the vision. And 10 years ago there was no word about subsurface in the vision at all. So we're making steps. If you want to turn the wheel in the viewpoint of the city needs, you need to address quite some subjects. And I will tell them just quickly. It's about data, borehole data, turn it into information, like the models the geological organizations can make. TNO is the National Geological Organization in the Netherlands. You can make traffic light maps, so you can see where it's cheap or expensive to remediate, so it helps people what to do where. You can look to the process, and you can put in the subsurface earlier in the process, in the planning spatial development process. And you can use this method, which is a system exploration, which is developed by the TU Delft, which is urban studies. And it's a system exploration, and on the left side we have the layers of the urban design. Again, the people, metabolism, buildings, public space, infrastructures, and the subsurface. And on the x-axis there are the subsurface themes: civil constructions, energy, water, and soil or subsurface. And in that you can use this methodology if you have issues that are from the development or from the subsurface which are important. And you can put there the chances and the problems on this map. So you're looking at the same model and you can talk about it. How can we work on these issues? We already do that for many years with students, with the TU Delft and all the other students, but also mainly the TU Delft. And in the beginning we had like 30 students, and now the last years we have more than 100 students coming to us, and we give them our subsurface information and they make plans including the subsurface. It's really interesting. And some of these students now start working in Rotterdam, so that's also a way that the older urban planners are getting into this methodology. And then, of course, the governance is important, and in the Netherlands, of course, we have different governances, and we just don't make it too easy. So we have 3 different layers of governance, from the municipalities, the province, and the national government. And on the other side, we do things about knowledge sharing, because that's really important. I can see that you do it as well. We also do it in European, we did it in European context, and it was called Cost Suburban. You can still find it on the, if you search on the website, you can still find it. We started with 7 countries, and we ended up with 27 countries. And next I can show you a bit. It was in the first place, it were the national geological surveys that were thinking about improving their information for the cities. So that was the starting point. And then we said, okay, then we also need the city needs. The city needs should be in the center. And it worked quite well, I must say, because there were also knowledge-based organizations, universities, that also cooperate with this project. And then another project, which was a little bit before, was the Balance for P project with Gothenburg, Belgium and the Netherlands, working together with the TU Delft and Deltares and Stadshavens Rotterdam. And they were searching in ways how can we improve our process. And actually it was also a really nice project, and it helped us to attract students for MH4 harbor area, because that was where this project was about. So the students, they were working on this MH4 area, and these are the teams they were taking it into account. Various from connectivity up to sustainable food production. And they really worked on it quite nice, and I can show you just a few examples that they made. And one of them, he made, Sebastian Hulse, he made an analysis with the green in the area, and as I already showed you, it was a really gray area, as you can see, just a little green spots in there, and he was making a more connection with the river, with the tidal park, and with a park for the water storage. And on the right side, you can see the red line on the right side. That's a rooftop park, which is already there. So that's really gives a start for this green connection. And this is the map he made, how it combines with the area. And just some examples of how it looks like if you can walk around in this area with the floating wetlands and the trees combined with energy, or entering the waterfront with the steps. I've seen it in other places here as well in the plants in Riga. And this is just an example of the floating plants and hanging weeds, which is really nice for biodiversity, but also nice for recreational aspects, because animals attract people, and it makes it a much nicer place. This is also a combination how you can improve the location. The top is how it is now, and the bottom is the new thing. On the left side, you can see how the plot is widened, and the cables and pipes are just at the outside, and it leaves space in the middle for trees and greening. On the right side, you see the building built on the K-walls, so also widening the plot and using the K-walls as a foundation. So that's also a possibility. Sannemoy, she did a really long study for how you can help the subsurface infrastructure for the new development. So she was looking for the old K-walls, the red lines, so you can still use them. And there's some yellow lines on the top that you can use for the water. And one of the piers, the dotted area, she found out that there was a river dune. So it's a sandy river dune, so you can build without foundation. So that's also interesting to think about. And this is how the results of Sannemoy found out in this plot. Now I think I just forgot one important thing, because where you are working on is about the stakeholders, and I just want to say something about the stakeholders. We are working here with the harbor authorities and the municipality, and the harbor authorities, they are mostly involved with the companies who are working in this area. So in the beginning it was really hard to find a way to communicate how to make it more into a city area, city development area, and also to help them to think in this holistic approach, because they said we just want to give plots to other companies. So they were not really interested also in the soil remediation. So then we said, just let us have some creative sessions, so they can think about what can happen when the soil remediation and the location is ready. What can you do more with it? also in a temporary way. And then they get interested, and from there on, also some of the big companies who are there, they start to get interested, because then they saw, okay, when this location is getting more livable, it's also interesting for us. For instance, there was one company with an educational institute on their plot. They think, okay, when it's a more nicer area, our institute becomes more important. So it's nicer for students to go there. So I think from the remediation on, we try to get people more involved. And until now, it starts to work. But still, it takes time to get every stakeholder involved. For instance, there are 50 stakeholders in this area, and I think we have maybe 10 of them are involved. So we have some way to go. And it takes energy to bridge the gap between different cultures. And well, what we found out is the concept of the approach is really well handled by students. So I think the students, they really know how to deal with the new concepts. And we also did workshops in Poland and Romania, and even though they didn't have really much information about the subsurface, they were really quite well equipped and to deal with it and make good plans. And in Rotterdam, more and more projects make use of this approach, and this methodology. And it can also be helpful in our new legislation, in which we have to be a more integrated approach of how we deal with the livability. Also improving the input of the people. And last but not least, it's a slow road to awareness, but if we start early in the process, we can deal with it. And recently we had a project with animal farms. We try to explain to children from primary school how the importance of the subsurface and the soil, healthy soil. So what kind of animals are there in the soil? What can you do with the rainwater, etc. And these primary school kids, they were really interested, and by them, also their parents were interested. So I think we will get there if we just continue with this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Kees. It's exactly like you said, that subsurface, it's not a very popular thing in a planning process, and I actually also never before thought about this aspect. But I wanted to ask, how about in Rotterdam about the subsurface ownership? Because according to local legislation, you theoretically own everything to the core and to the stars. So do you have to working with these deep layers somehow to also talk to the stakeholders?
You mean, do I play with how we deal with the deeper layers?
Yes.
Well, actually, that's one of the things we try to get people aware of, that these layers are there too, and that they actually, the groundwater layer is in the center of the city. That's planned. So there's legislation. If people want to make a hot well or cold well, they know where they can put it. So we started with that. And for the deep layer, for instance, this geothermal energy, it wasn't in the minds of the Rotterdam planners until recently. I think it's just only 1 year ago, and my colleague is already telling this story for more than 10 years, and now they start thinking, okay, maybe it's a good combination with the hot water pipeline we have from the harbor. Because in the beginning they thought, okay, we have this hot water line from the harbor, from the residue heat, and that's the solution for the whole of Rotterdam. But now they think, okay, maybe we need to be a bit more resilient, and we also can make use of these geological, geothermal wells. So it starts to come, but we have to be progressive on this issue.
Of course. We have the time for questions, so yeah, we have a question.
Hello, thank you very much for an inspiring lecture. My question would be like this. do you think that private property in the city in modern times is justified? Because if we're talking also about the ground level, the subsurface, the drinking water, these are the resources we all share. And also to make the city more energy efficient, probably we need to cooperate all together. We cannot have just separate privately owned land plots anymore in the city. So, and this private property often hampers the development of the city further, at least what we have now in Riga, that since we have a lot of private property, the city cannot develop large-scale project from which everybody would benefit. So what's your view on that?
I think it's a very interesting viewpoint, because what I see in Rotterdam is that they had a lot of public property, and they had a lot of governed owned property by the municipality, and now they sell it to the people, to the private owners, because of they think then they don't have to maintain it. So, and I think in future times, I think it's a bad development. I think it should be better that there's more public owned space because of the reasons you're mentioning. So I think you're right that it's good to have more public, more municipality owned places because of the development, and if you want to make it multifunctional because of the climate change, etc. In Rotterdam, a big problem is that we have a lot of rain in certain periods, and people, the private people, they just pave their backyards. So when it rains, we have really big problems with the water. And in the public space, we try to make water storage facilities, which cost a lot of money. So these two movements are working against each other. So it should be a good thought to have more land owned by the government, by the municipality. Yeah.
Okay, any more questions? Oh.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. So I was thinking about the subsurface data and how to actually make it available. And there is this policymakers, planners, and then constructors. So do you have some kind of how do you do it in practice? Do you have some kind of city model that you can open up for different parts, or how do you actually make the subsurface data available for different parties and so that they understand it?
Yeah, well, actually, the best thing we can do is making 3D models on certain projects. So we did that now for a few times. So we don't have a really 3D model for the whole of the city. We're working on that with the geological survey and the maintenance department. So we're working on that. And I think that would be the best thing, because then everybody could look inside the subsurface, and then they can say, okay, I need the data from that and that layer. So now we have the 2D layers, so we can show it on the 2D, and we have the data, of course. So if people want to work in a certain area, we can give them the data, and we can help them to unfold the data, because that's always, you have to need some interpretation, and so we're working on it. It's not ready yet, because I know there's I think there's a city in Finland that has a 3D city model. They were also in the European project, so they're really far ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions? Yeah, I already warned the organizers that this is a Latvian audience, so probably we will raise the hands only 2 days after the conference. Okay, but then I will move with some icebreaker. You already mentioned these 4 Ps. They are like not only the ones you mentioned, people, planet, prosperity, and process, but they are used also in the business and in marketing, even in pizza delivery. And I wanted to provoke you that one other guy from Rotterdam, Rem Koolhaas, said that now everything is about shopping, and airports is a super mall, church is a super mall, museums are a super mall. So I would like to ask in terms of marketing for PAs. Marketing for PAs are price, product, place and promotion. So where do you see image 4 according to the marketing for PAs?
I think most of it is, I think, about image, because if you want, on the long term, if you want to be resilient, you need a holistic approach, and I think it's about the image you want to have as a city. And I think in Rotterdam sometimes we choose to be a city of the big, beautiful buildings, and I think for now it's okay, but I think for the future time, for instance, the Markthal, I don't know if you know that, that's the big U-formed building. Everybody says, oh, wow, that's really nice, but now, you know, now they're starting to work there, and in practice it's not always that nice because it's too hot, it's too cold, because it's a glass building. So, and I think if you want to be more holistic, you have to think about, you have to think further on a long term. So,
yeah, so this is more about the product, because the price we understood it's 90 million.
yeah.
Okay, thank you, Case, for your very interesting keynote. And I now go to the official part that we have a first coffee break. So everyone please proceed to the hallway. And please be back exactly at 11 o'clock, so we will proceed with the first interactive session. And it's gonna be interesting, especially because there will be opportunity to send your questions also anonymously. So maybe Latvians finally will start to discuss the actualities. Thank you, and let's have some coffee and some